Okay, guys, can you hear me? So first things first, let me apologize for my outfit, because it's Hyvä Developers Paradise, so let me just change. Now we can start, and before I do, I got those two amazing things left. Who wants one? All right, you don't mind if I throw, but actually, you know what? I actually have much more. I need volunteers because I got 97 more. So there's one for everybody. So just to spread the joy. So I need 2 volunteers. There's a giant bag with 95 or 94 more hats. So we got one for everybody, and it would be great to have like a picture, everybody wearing it by the end of my talk. Can we agree on that? Yeah. Awesome. So, and beware of that. This is going to be a passionate talk. So I might swear this is not intentional. This will be just my passion speaking through. So I would like to apologize in advance. So if you put it on YouTube or somewhere else, just make sure to use the bleeps. You probably know me, so let's just skip this slide. You may not know about this. The black hat I have is not a joke. It's actually a real thing. So I need to keep finding constant way to be creative in order to do my job properly. It's a fun twist with my DNA. I started to enjoy it much more because it allows me to be more productive than I ever was in the last couple months. You probably follow my LinkedIn. If you didn't, please do so. So let's do it. This talk is about not pointing fingers. It's about my own personal experience. So your experience probably could have been different. So let's see whether some of you can resonate with what I actually went through in my entire journey in Magento, which has been over 14 years now. So we start our journey with Magento 1, and we'll finish with what I like to call Magento Renaissance, which I call Community 3.0. We'll not talk about Magento 3.0 because we don't need Magento 3.0. We got Hyvä, right? So who needs other front end? So let's do it. My Magento 1 started, my Community 1, as I like to call the journey, started with the first Meet Magento event I attended in Poland. And I was blown away by the energy, by positive people, but how people shared the knowledge about Magento, how many case studies we had, from like small merchants up to enterprise level clients on Magento 1. It was truly one kind of an experience, and I can summarize it in 4, you could say, points. But it was much more than that. But those are the key factors which made me realize I'm in a good place, I'm surrounded with great people, and it's just amazing to be there. And a lot of people are still here who went there during my Magento 1 days when I started my journey, back with Creativity, then with Snowdog. Then I started my own agency, which we named qoliber last year. So Magento Community 1.0 was a place to learn, place to meet, place to teach sometimes, place to grow, but it was also a place for competition. I don't know if you know the term, there was like some people trying to make it a thing, the competition. So we compete for the merchants, but we also work together for the common good of the community, for the common good of the merchants. And that was absolutely astounding. We work with other agencies. We hired other agencies to work with us. We were hired to work on the projects together. It was one of a kind experience. So everybody was happy. Everybody was like dancing. It was absolutely amazing. The only regret I have is that I never went to Imagine. There was always something happening at home. I couldn't attend Imagine, so I would probably regret it to the end of my days. But we have Meet Magento Miami, which has a very similar vibe. So if you haven't been to Meet Magento Miami, definitely book your place next year. So what happened? Magento 2 happened. And this is my own personal opinion. And some of you might find it a little bit shocking, but I think Magento 2.0 was like a nuke for our community, was like an atom bomb for the entire thing that our entire community started to build among the years. Now, what I mean by a nuclear strike. Magento 2 started the Community 2.0, and I think we went sideways with how we behaved, what we did as a community, because expectations were high. Magento expected a lot of stuff from us. We expected a lot of stuff from Magento, but it was like never organized. It was never like formalized in any way. So a lot of expectations were done in the community and agencies and the freelancers, but actually sometimes we forgot to talk what sort of expectations we have and what we expect from Magento. So I would like to summarize it in this small sentence. That's early days of Magento 2, we had contribution days, we had hackathons, we had GitHub repository, so finally we could see the Magento 2 open source code, but it started with slow PRs processing. It was hundreds or even thousands of bugs, making Magento 2 kind of impossible to work with at the very early days. So how many of you actually implemented Magento 2.0 on the production side? What was your experience like? Thank you, Willem. And many people felt like that with Magento 2.0. But what I found was the most devastating for our community is that competition vanished. I believe, that's my personal opinion, maybe some of you feel the same way, maybe you feel different. But when Magento 2.0 was released, it started the arms race between all the agencies in every country. Because it was the new platform, it was a new catchy, trendy thing, new platform, we want to be on it, so everybody wanted to be on the top. And with Magento 2.0, Meet Magento event started, and I was like, I attended first event in, I think, 2016 or 2017 with Meet Magento. Where was the energy? Where are the great examples how we can improve Magento, what we can do with it? And I was not the only one who felt that way. A lot of merchants actually felt the same way. Because back in early days, when Magento 2.0 and 2.1 were released, the only case studies you had were actually about very big brands doing Magento. The ones who could afford it, the one who didn't mind the platform being in a very early stage. But that was the big issue we did as an entire community. We started showing huge examples, so small and medium-sized merchants started turning away from Magento because they thought that the platform is too big. They are too small to handle that. That's what I felt. I talked to many merchants among the years, and that's how they felt as well. Among that, the frustration started to pile up. Lazy front end, lazy back end, slow indexers, hundreds of bugs, and nobody to talk to. Well, there were some people who we could talk to back then, but we know that they are no longer with Adobe or they are no longer with Magento. So frustration started to pile up in our community. People started complaining. Some of them were just trolls, and let me admit it on the stage, I was one of them back in my early days. But it came from passion, really, that I cared about Magento and I want to see it flourish for everybody, not just for me. But yeah, so happy days. Adobe bought Magento. And I remember the happy faces I saw. I remember a lot of people get excited because there's finally a huge entity that we can talk to that is really care and passionate about e-commerce. Now, I dare you to speak to Matthias to tell you how much Adobe knew about Magento community when it was acquisitioned by Adobe. Please don't tell us now, because we had a lot of conversation about it, but you really need to ask him how much Adobe knew about our community. I'll just say this, from Adobe perspective, they bought Magento, and suddenly there's a couple thousands of people complaining that they don't do anything. So it doesn't seem fair. So months gone by, years gone by, and we see there was something that was called Magento Association back before the type of free guy joined. Sorry about that. But I think we can all agree that Magento Association didn't deliver much. To put it simply, in its early days. We didn't know what actually is Magento Association role. We didn't know what it does. And Magento started fading away. And Adobe even, I don't know the exact date, but they announced, I think it was 2021 or maybe early, that Magento is now Adobe Commerce. So even when the merchants started looking for a Magento, they found Adobe Commerce, which we know is a paid solution. It's not an open source solution. So we all kind of went the wrong ways. Adobe didn't actually follow, or maybe they didn't, I think they didn't just know how to work with the open source community as large as our community is. We didn't know how to get our message to Adobe. So frustration piled up, and piled up. And a lot of agencies and a lot of freelancers decided just to stay in one place and see what happens. And trust me, a lot of agencies and freelancers are still in this starting block. They're waiting for things to happen. And let me tell you, that should end today. We don't want to wait for things to happen, but I'll talk about this later. And then COVID hit. So that second nuclear strike, not just for our community, but all the communities worldwide. And I think, on the one hand, COVID made us realize one thing. We need to meet, we need to organize, because I think we all like each other, right? Don't you think so? And our community spirit thinks what we do together is absolutely amazing, and together we can outrun any Shopify, any SaaS solution, anything that there is on the market. Our community can outrun it, and I'll show you by the numbers in the next couple of minutes how we can actually do it. So, but the COVID did one terrible thing for not just for Magento, and this is the word I use when I talk about COVID days. In anything related to the IT, e-commerce, blog, CMS systems, and so on. I call it was like the rise of scamgencies. So a lot of companies just joined the ecosystem, especially Magento ecosystem, because when COVID started, Magento was the most popular framework there was. So everybody wanted to join the fun, and some people just wanted to make money. And I will tell you this, in my experience, the project I see, which we take on as qoliber, 9 out of 10 are broken. It's like the worst sheet of code you ever seen, and I put it in very nice words now. If you are on the Mage chat, you probably see me ranting a lot about the code quality we inherit. It's absolute, let me just say, it's a fucking nightmare to see how people made Magento really bad. It's like absolute trash, and the worst part, you know what's the worst part? We know, everybody knows those scam agencies. They know them by name. Each of you probably could name you one or two from their own local market. But I don't want to point fingers, but I know that's the case. But our problem is that we don't do anything about it. There's one thing we can do. I'll talk about it in a couple of minutes. But the COVID effect on the IT industry was just like people joining to earn as much money as possible without looking at the consequences, without looking how they will ruin our community, how they ruin Magento brand, PrestaShop even got hit, WooCommerce got hit, every platform got hit, and it made the SaaS platforms grow because it became easier for the merchants to just use those SaaS platforms. So that's basically me. When I look at the projects I inherit, or we look at qoliber, it's just frustrating to see how people can actually do it. And can you believe that you can actually break Hyvä implementation? It's pretty easy to do, but it's not one project we actually see in the last couple of months. It's 6 projects in total. In the last 6 months, we saw developers modifying the compiled CSS file. No tailwind, no nothing. They just get the compiled CSS file and work from there. So, I don't know why, but it happens. So even people can, scam agencies can actually break really awesome solutions. Not just Hyvä. They can break extensions from Amastia, Headworks, things that we do, and we need to do something about it. That's what this talk is basically about. But time passes by, and we didn't see Magento Association. It was very quiet. Nothing was going on. Magento Star was fading away. When merchants were browsing e-commerce platform, they didn't find Magento. They couldn't find a single case study even for their own size of business, especially from the small and medium merchants. So nothing was going on. And to be perfectly honest, we are all to blame because we didn't share our message that Magento can be great. A lot of us were silent. So frustration has reached its peaking point and it's exploded. With the open letter to community, that started the change which I believe I call Community 3.0. Because the whole open letter community, I love the fact that everybody was pissed off. I love the fact that everybody was completely frustrated with Adobe, with the entire market situation. So people just exploded and something positive happened. We got the supernova of MageOS and we got supernova of Hyvä. So we got 2 new shiny bright stars in our e-commerce ecosystem that actually, what I like to say, form a new symbol. This is something that I really work hard with AI. So it formed this universal solution, Magento plus Hyvä or MageOS. But the orange color. Orange is the future, as we know, as it was talked today. So I think that was inspired the change, that thing sparked, reignited the energy that our community had. but people weren't listened to. So thank you for that. Thank you for open letter to the community. Thank you for Hyvä, because you guys showed us that with positive attitude, with energy, and actually getting frustrated and angry boosts creativity and sparks creativity in our community, and I would like to follow on that. So this is the day I say the community 3.0 started, and that's me till today. I just find new ways to be creative, to share the things I do with all of you. If you follow my LinkedIn, if you follow the GitHub profile of qoliber, there's something that released every week. And I'm getting more pumped up and excited everything I share stuff with you folks. And that's where we are. We got Magento Association. We actually got a community vote to vote somebody from the community to Magento Association board. Something that I thought was impossible under I put it simply, under previous leadership. So we got Magento Association, and there's one thing I didn't like about today. I don't want to point fingers, so I didn't like the fact that somebody mentioned that Adobe neglects Magento open source. They don't. They really care, and this is coming from the mouth of somebody who used to put really huge blame and talk shit about Adobe and their approach and neglecting us. That was not the case. Again, ask Matthias how much Adobe knew about our community. You'll be surprised, or you might even not believe what you hear about it. So we got our events back. We have Magento, so meet Magento. We got Mage Time Dance, we got Mage on conferences, and I do apologize, I didn't put Hyvä Developers Paradise logo on here, so sorry for this. So what to do from now on? We got the energy, we got amazing community, we got amazing developers. So how to secure this Magento future? What to do? I got a couple more ideas. It's time for Magento Star to shine bright again on the e-commerce night. And this is the moment where we need, and our community needs every one of you, because I started to think, why did it fade in the first place? What happened? I mentioned it before. We didn't talk to Adobe or the previous owners of Magento. There was lack of discussion. There was a lot of expectations done. There were some things that said or left unsaid in many situations. But I'll be perfectly honest, we let Magento start to fade. By this arms race when Magento started, by not sharing ideas. So when I think like that things are starting to change, I turn to math. So let's do some math. I don't have the font. I actually have a cool font here. So let's do some math. What sort of impact we could have had if we all chipped in 5 years ago or even 10 years ago. So based on some LinkedIn posts, we have 300,000 Magento developers worldwide. Let's just assume they're hired by 1,000 agencies, just for easier calculations. And let's just agree that 90% of them are not part of our community. And I think it's safe to say. I think the number is even more than that. But just for easier calculations, let's agree that only 100 agencies worldwide care about Magento. They share their code, they share solutions, they organize meetups, they talk to merchants, so they care about our own community and actually want Magento to flourish and shine bright on this e-commerce night again. So let's do these calculations. Again, for easier calculations, let's just assume that every agency only gives one developer for 1 day of the month. So it's 10 hours a month. Every agency on the market just gives us one developer for 10 hours a month. So let's just do this math. 100 agencies times 10 hours times 120 months, because that's 10 years. Magento is 10 years old this year. So you tell me, what could have been accomplished in this number of hours in the last 10 years? Because when I saw that number the very first time, I was like, oh, fuck. That was my just in Polish. That was my first reaction. Do you think we could have... Do we have the next slide? Oh. I know we have the new admin theme. I just put it here to show you. Do you think that 100,020 hours, let's just assume 20 hours was actually productive time and we spent 80% of our time just talking, discussing what to do, and actually dedicated 20% of time to real work, like the Pareto rule. Do you think that in 24,000 hours, we could have solved the indexer issue? Could we solve the unit testing or integration testing or completely write anything from scratch for Magento? I know it's just the number and it would be hard to organize those 100 people, but if you look at the numbers, if we all chipped in just a little, we could have been in a much better place and we could outrun any e-commerce platform on the market that there is and make them run for their money. But I talk about only development. So only 10 hours of development, 100 developers each month. Let's do the same for marketing. Do you think we would have like a nice case studies available everywhere on the web, showing that Magento is like perfect, could be perfect for small business, but it's also perfect for large enterprise because the platform is this flexible? So yeah, 120 hours, it's 100 people here. So imagine if everybody just dedicated 10 hours in the last 10 years every month. Is 10 hours a lot? So what about our future? What is missing? Because we have the energy, we have the events. Let's say we dedicate everything, those 10 hours a month. Let's agree that everybody here agrees I will dedicate 10 hours for the good of open source to have Magento running for the next 10 or 20 years even. I don't know what the future brings, so let's just agree on 5. We are missing this part. There are a lot of people still in the starting blocks since basically Magento 2 was released. And I don't want to point fingers, but if you're running an agency and you never contributed anything to the open source community, please rethink your priorities. That's all I ask. Because everybody here shares their stuff, and trust me, from my experience, once I started sharing stuff I do, like some open source modules, talking on stage, even submitting a bug to GitHub repository on Magento is a contribution. Because you let people know that there is something wrong with the platform. But we don't want people waiting in the starting blocks. We need action. And that's what we all need to do. That's why we need to start joining, but also, most important thing, we need to start talking about Magento much more, not only on these events. Okay, we got Meet Magento, we got Make Citas. We all know Magento is great. But talk to any merchant that started e-commerce business in the last 4 years if they heard about Magento. This will be like probably around 15, maybe 20, maybe 25%, but only if they talk to an agency which recommended them a solution. I'm not saying that all the SaaS platforms are bad, because they are mature, they are great, and if you're running or want to start selling fast, just go with the SaaS solution. But when we're talking about customization, Magento outruns every platform there is on the market, and period, that's it. It's the best platform for any customized e-commerce needs. So that was also very sad to see. And Matthias, were there in Miami with me. There was a talk, it's supposed to be a talk about Magento open source future. And if I remember correctly, actually there were like multiple ideas thrown into the air, and somebody just asked, but who will do it? I mean, what the fuck? The nerve of some people. So just waiting for others to do all the work for them, that's not what open source community is about. We need to start sharing our stuff, even if it's an open source module. So basically start contributing with anything you can. Report a bug, create an article, write a case study, contribute core, organize events. But our focus should be on organizing events for the merchants now. So they know Magento was never gone, it never died, it's shiny, and it can be a really good solution. And that's what I think we need to do. And I commit here on this stage right now, in 3 weeks, I will finish professional service listing module for Magento Association. I've already completed an event calendar, but probably you don't know about it. So dedicate your time. And there's one more thing I have to say. Not this. I thought the next slide is different, sorry. But that's also important. We need to make sure that Magento voice is heard. And again, Hyvä, thanks for making Magento simpler and cheaper for the merchant to go, and time to market is really easy. So again, thanks for that, and waiting for the CMS, because that will be a game changer. Again, this will bring a lot of people back to Magento. So here's a round of applause for Hyvä again. I hope the next slide is the thing that we discussed last night of the after party. So one last thing, and it's a term we came up with last night. Don't be a mage hole. And I think you all know what that means. Start contributing, even if you don't have time, chip in, organize a meetup, talk to people. But there's one thing, we need events, because we don't know where the next Magento star and next contributor will show up, who will basically do some amazing things with our community for Magento. Look at the MageOS with the async module. I don't think you realize how powerful that module actually is with the end-to-end, which Andreas was talking about. That is a game changer for enterprise clients, and I just leave it at that. So again, don't be a mage hole. I'm not saying that you are if you don't contribute, because this is basically referring to people just complaining about Magento, not being good. Let's don't do it. We know Magento is great, and thank you for listening to me, and thank you for attending.